For a game centred around freely moving back and forth through millennia, it's fitting that Chrono Trigger is timeless. There are few things that I can say about this SNES RPG masterpiece that haven't been said already, but damn it, this game is special to me, and having played through it again recently for its 25th anniversary, I wanted to share my recollections and things I noticed this time around that I hadn't before, because any truly great game has layers and things you won't pick up on until your second, third or 100th playthrough. So let's jump in the epoch and take a trip back to the game's origin. Get ready for a brief history of Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was the brainchild of the holy trinity of Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, Dragon Quest Yuji Horii and Dragon Ball's Akira Toriyama, who came together with the dream of creating a game unlike any other. Developed under the Square name, the company responsible for Final Fantasy, work began in 1993, bringing together around 60 of its best and brightest. Composer Yasunori Mitsuda put his blood, sweat and tears into the soundtrack, a little too literally, giving himself stomach ulcers due to stress. Every cloud has a silver lining though, and this meant that legendary Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu took up musical duties. Inspired by the concept of time travel, this group of prolific creatives, aptly dubbed the Dream Team, set out to make a revolutionary new RPG adventure, building on the success of Final Fantasy VI, which had taken the world by storm a year before. Before we discuss how this team of devs made history, in more ways than one, I should point out that I'm not going to include any huge spoilers. I'll just make reference to some basic plot points. After all, I would hope this video persuades those of you who haven't played the game before to go and give it a try, so far be it from me to ruin the story for you. Chrono Trigger takes place in... well, it's kinda hard to say exactly. The story starts with a young man, Chrono, waking up in his idyllic hometown of Truce on the day of their millennial fair, commemorating the 1000th anniversary of the Kingdom of Guardia. This is set in 1000 AD, which is framed as being the present from the protagonist's perspective. It's ostensibly a medieval fantasy setting, but the Millennial Fair subtly foreshadows a lot of the things you'll be seeing. If you venture at the eastern area, you'll see performers dressed as cave people dancing at tribal beats, while on the left side you can face off against a singing robot. It's like a microcosm of the game's myriad worlds to come. 1000 AD carries a sort of steampunk theme of impending technological revolution, and this is best demonstrated by Chrono's childhood friend Luca. She and her father have built a teleportation machine to showcase at the fair, which Chrono and his new friend Marl volunteer to guinea pig. However, when Marl steps onto the platform, her mysterious pendant makes things go awry and she disappears in a flash. Chrono and Luca then take up the mantle of heroism early in the story and follow Marl through the time gate to rescue her. They arrive in the same place 400 years earlier, when it's a lush canyon as opposed to a town square. Making their way to the castle, they find Marl literally being treated like a queen by the medieval inhabitants. She suddenly disappears again, at which point Luca explains the potential risks of time travel. Queen Lean, the monarch of this time period of 600 AD, has been kidnapped by monstrous fiends and the king's army have been looking for her. However, we learn that Marl is actually the descendant of the medieval queen, and by mistaking Marl for Queen Lean, the search is erroneously called off. This means that Queen Lean is going to be killed, meaning that Marl will never exist in the future if the Queen isn't around to have children and ensure the royal lineage continues. Chrono and Luca rescue Queen Lean, restoring the passage of time and resurrecting Marl. However, returning to their own time, Chrono finds himself on trial for kidnapping the princess and is unfairly sentenced to death. Luca assists him in a jailbreak and, with Marl in tow after a fallout with her father, the king, they escape into another time gate, arriving in a barren dystopian land 1300 years in the future, where the few remaining humans are either slowly starving or meeting their end at the hands of murderous robots and mutants. Learning of the apocalypse in 1999 that caused this destruction, the emergence of an ancient subterranean parasite called Lavos, the heroes set off on an adventure through the ages to save their world by preventing the beast from ever awakening. Within that first hour or two of gameplay, Chrono Trigger has fully immersed the player through an engaging narrative and exciting gameplay. With very little exposition, you've come to care for the characters, understand its time travel and mechanics, and learn a bit about the world, or worlds, in which it takes place. While the game is largely based in one setting, it's more how that setting changes over time that makes this feel like an expansive epic quest. You'll see the world in its prehistoric volcanic form, in which you'll interact with early humankind and do battle with dinosaurs, and bear witness to its ruined futuristic fate and everything in between. This makes entering each new era for the first time familiar but still so alien. Each time is populated with its own colourful characters, and you'll recruit them into your party, which will ultimately come to include everything from a primitive cave woman to a sentient robot. You'll repeatedly experience the downfall of humanity brought on by forces outside of their control. You'll see cave people face the onset of an ice age as their water and wildlife begins to deplete, You'll see a magical civilization lose everything at the hands of their demented leader, and of course, you'll see Lavos raining destruction on modern humans, condemning them to a life in a sunless hellscape. You can't save every world in this game, and you're forced to bear witness to the way civilization perpetually resets itself. This lends a persistent sense of sadness to Chrono Trigger, but that also goes some way to making it memorable. What I appreciated more this time is just how dark the game can be. The starving inhabitants of a futuristic dome ask you to travel to a dangerous chamber below them to find food, including a little girl who tells you that her father set off there earlier in an effort to help his people. Upon reaching the storage beyond the robotic security system, you find that the refrigeration has failed, spoiling the food that they longed for as the body of a man lies nearby. It's a simple but powerful, cruel twist of fate reminiscent of the Twilight Zone. Later in the Fiend Lord's monster-infested tower, his henchmen are resurrecting dead skeletal human soldiers like playthings and forcing them to fight over and over as they beg for death. This had totally slipped my mind and kinda knocked me for six this time. And near the game's finale, one side quest gives you another insight into the ruinous 2300 AD, the systematic genocide of a conveyor belt of humans by a malevolent AI. This is all pretty extreme, disturbing stuff, even for a game set against the backdrop of historical disasters and war. That only makes the little pockets of hope all the more rewarding though, and this game also has plenty of those to uncover. Persuading a woman in 12,000 BC to keep a mysterious seed despite the instruction of her cruel queen to destroy it will see it ultimately end up in the hands of her descendant, Fiona, in 600 AD. Destroying a desert-dwelling monster for the young woman allows her to finally plant the seed where there once was a deadly sea of quicksand. The party then leave their robot member Robo to till the land for centuries since he's effectively immortal, and returning in the present, they find a lush forest complete with a shrine dedicated to the long-dead Fiona and housing the deactivated robot. The starving people in the future will also now possess a number of potted plants, a sign of hope that they can once again harvest food. It's a beautifully written, expertly executed sequence of events that interlinks a story of human resilience through the ages and how a small act of kindness can go a long way. And that's just an optional side quest. Another one sees the greedy mayor of Por in 1000 AD steal the precious moonstone and refuses to give it to the party. Travelling back to the house in 600 AD lets you meet his ancestor, who's looking for some jerky. Handing some over to her for free changes her outlook on the world, making her see that kindness does exist, and she resolves to pass those values down to her descendants. Returning to Por in the present, you'll find that the mayor has inherited this positive outlook, enjoying a much healthier relationship with his wife and children, and kindly handing over the moonstone. Elsewhere, pouring a drink on the grave of an adventurer you befriended hundreds of years prior will put his spirit at ease, his ghost revealing the location of a great treasure, the Rainbow Shell, which the characters help bring to the castle of Marl's royal ancestors. Back in the present, a twist of events involving this shell, now stored for generations in the basement of the castle as an heirloom, ends up being pivotal in mending Marl's fractured relationship with her father. And that's what makes these side quests a renowned aspects of Chrono Trigger. They're not just optional tasks to acquire powerful gear before the final battle, they tie up loose ends of the character's personal story arcs and bring a sense of closure and true completion. One of the game's best optional scenes sees the party build a campfire in the newly restored forest I discussed earlier. Having mulled on it for 400 years while ploughing the land, Robo opines that the mysterious gates the party use to travel through time aren't created by Lavos, but by a different entity that wants the characters to see these events in order to help save the future. It's generally thought that this entity is the Earth itself, calling out for help while being drained by the monster in its depths, but I like the alternative explanation that the entity is you, the player. Luca then wakes in the night to find an oddly coloured gate that returns her to the day of her mother's accident that left her disabled and permanently unable to walk. If you successfully change the past here, her mother will instead be asking her father to dance at the game's celebratory ending. It's an incredibly satisfying, emotionally charged segment, and I love the idea that you, the player, metaphysically wished into existence this second chance for Luca, a character you've grown to care about like a dear friend. This is one of the ways in which you're put in charge of the personal destinies of the people involved, something that's often present in the main storyline too. It sometimes happens in pivotal ways, like choosing to slay or spare a particular enemy's life, or sometimes almost imperceptibly. I'll say one thing. Listen to Chrono's mother and consider your actions at the fair at the start of the game very carefully. Even though little aspects like this usually don't have too big an impact on the overall story, it helps bond you with the party, to feel that they're palpable moral beings whose lives you're toying with, as opposed to merely avatars in a video game. Sadly, you can only have 3 party members with you at any one point, meaning that the others need to wait at the end of time, the game's central hub. But the way that the different combinations interact with each other always makes me wonder how the absent members would react in any given situation. It makes me almost miss them when they're not there. On this playthrough, I even deliberately mixed up the party a bit to bring different characters into scenarios I hadn't seen them in before. But regardless of who you pick, all of them are capable of seeing you through the game, and part of the fun is switching your party around from chapter to chapter. Unused characters will even level up alongside your active ones, so they're ready to step in at any time. And another part of what helps endear these characters to the player are the beautiful visuals, which have aged well since 1995. Akira Toriyama's distinctive artwork speaks for itself, but it's the beautifully animated sprites which, despite their pixelated nature, convey emotions so effectively, whether it's laughter, surprise or heartache. Marle is one of the most expressive. The Pepe Princess frequently jumps for joy, like when you win a battle, and on my recent playthrough I even noticed that she giggles when her crossbow shot misses a target. Then there's the way Ayla confidently beckons to her teammates to send their half of a dual attack her way, epitomising her fiery fighting spirit. The minute overworld sprites will even begin to fidget when left standing around for too long. These are subtle, practically insignificant details, but it highlights the love and care that imbue the very core of this game. The settings are sublime, resplendent in their own thematic identities, contrasting the bright, untamed wilds of prehistory, the magical utopia above the bleak, blizzard-ravaged tundra of antiquity, the lush canyons and ghostly castles of the medieval age, and the imposing industrial factories of the future. Of course, as is often the case, video game environments would be nothing without a fitting soundtrack, and as you'd probably expect by now in this superlative fest of a Chrono Trigger retrospective, the music of this game truly slaps, as the teenagers might say. From the opening sequence, there's a progressive rock opera vibe. It's one of the most life-affirming game themes I've ever heard, and one that continues throughout the Odyssey, reshaped to fit each situation. The soundtrack as a whole balances intrigue with a sense of urgency, capturing the idea of having to acclimatise to each new world and its challenges, but being aware of your overall goal of ensuring a prosperous future. Each character also has their own theme tied to their personality. Ayla's is fast-paced and heroic, contrasting her hyperactive energy with the more plaintive tribal drumbeat that plays through her native era. Robo starts as a harsh industrial beat, but gives way to a charming melody, carrying connotations of his restoration from a forgotten machine to a valued member of the crew, and the soft spot inside his metal body. Frogs, meanwhile, is a fan favourite. It's a serious fanfare that's much less playful than the other characters, that symbolises the knight's steadfast resolve to protect the medieval kingdom and avenge his murdered comrade, Cyrus. What's particularly striking about the game, especially for its time, is that its overworld set pieces also seamlessly become battle arenas. There's none of the random encounters that populated, some would say plagued, other RPGs of the time. Enemies are visible on the overworld, which wasn't exclusive to Chrono Trigger, but approaching them doesn't start a transition to a separate battle screen like in Earthbound, nor is it quite live action like Secret of Mana. Combat starts there and then when you come across a monster, your list of options suddenly bordering the scene. While you can choose for battles to be turn-based or active at the start of the game, I don't think anyone would argue that the latter isn't the best way to play. Foes don't wait for you to choose your next move, they come at you, ready or not, giving each face-off an engaging sense of urgency. Your party members' proximity to some moving targets also affects the effectiveness of your attack, so you often have to weigh up waiting for opponents to move into a more advantageous position against leaving yourself open to hits in the meantime. Alternatively, you can risk waiting until all of your party members are ready and enjoy the reward of an aforementioned dual or triple tech, super-powered moves performed jointly by 2 to 3 characters that will often clear the battlefield. These tacitly bond the party, and it's fun to play around and see how the various friends interact in combat and the effects of their combined powers. In the case of Magus, however, it's done in an inverse way. If you choose to recruit the Fiend Lord towards the end of the game, you'll find he's reluctant to get close to the other party members, symbolised through the lack of combo attacks he can perform with them. In a sense, the battle system is shaped in a way that subtly reflects his aloof, lone wolf personality. This is just one way the frenetic fighting goes a long way to enveloping you in the world, freeing the game from those immersion-breaking battle screens and helping to maintain the momentum that flows through the rest of the story. More of an intrinsic piece of the area you're exploring, and as long as you're not running from every single one, there's no real need to grind in this game. Fighting the majority of the baddies you encounter will keep you leveled up to a point where you at least have a chance against the bosses. On this playthrough, I actually found the game a bit easier than I remember, but not really in a bad way. It's still challenging and I never felt stuck per se, I just had to change my tactics for a few bosses. It might also be the fact that it's not my first rodeo. First time around, it took me ages to beat Magus and the Golem sisters, but only 1 or 2 tries this time, so hindsight is definitely a benefit. Regardless, Chrono Trigger is completely trimmed of fat, which lends it the quality of being highly replayable. This goes hand in hand with its revolutionary New Game Plus mechanic, which is available after clearing the game once and allows you to start over but retain the stats and equipment accrued in your last playthrough, giving you the option to challenge Lavos at various earlier points in the story and enjoy the myriad endings this game possesses. And trust me, you'll want to play this game again. There's an unwavering sense of ineffable nostalgia to Chrono Trigger which, even as a writer, I can't entirely explain with words. Perhaps it's the omnipresent melancholic music and desolate landscapes, perhaps it's the desperate situations you see the characters face and the hope that they're always able to muster, perhaps it's the classic Toriyama artwork and memorable characters, but this game truly taps a unique kind of feeling in me that few others do. Each aspect of Chrono Trigger is so carefully, cleverly crafted and so intricately woven into a bigger picture that it's easy for a player to become immersed and almost symbiotically connected to its world. 25 years ago, the Dream Team set out to create something that, to quote Sakaguchi, no one had done before. And even 2.5 decades later, with Chrono Trigger still being talked about by today's enthusiasts, boasting gameplay that still holds up, and its influence still prevalent in modern game design, I'd argue that no one has done it again since.